How y'all doing? How many people had wine for lunch? Or bourbon? You probably need one or the other for this pitch. Okay, so I've got 10 minutes to talk. And those of you who know me, 10 minutes is nothing. My wife tells me, if you keep putting quarters on the table, I can keep talking. So what I want to do today, first off, so you can put your pencils down, put your pens down, turn off your recorders, all that other stuff, because I'm not going to tell you anything about contracts. All right? You're going, well, wait a minute, this is forecast industry, you got to tell me about contracts. No, I got other folks in my organization going to tell you about the contract stuff. What I want to do is tell you what we're doing in the operations center, because there's been a lot going on. And if you've heard me speak before, one of the things I always tell you is, if you're a vendor coming in to see me, I want you to understand my world. Don't expect me to understand your world. I need you to understand what I'm doing, what my team is doing, and where we're headed, so that you can come in with solutions that fit into our space and support us in ways that we need to be able to achieve the goals that either are given to us or that we set for ourselves. And so if you don't understand my environment, then you're not going to be able to come in with a solution that's going to help you make your case as to why your product is better than the person sitting next to you's product is. So with that in mind, again, I'm not going to tell you what your targets of opportunity are, but I'll be happy to talk at length afterwards. I got the next slide. Okay, this time last year we had the Implementation Sustainment Center. We were in charge of putting capability out in the field, but we were not really responsible for operating it. One of the things General Lynn did earlier this year, we went live in October, was to collapse the Implementation and Sustainment Center with the Operations Center. So what does that mean from an agency perspective and from your perspective? If there's something in the field that's being used, if electrons are running across it in some way, shape, form, or fashion, then my organization has responsibility for it. The operating of it, the sustainment of it, the tech refresh of it, etc. So if you're thinking about the DISA, that's in ops. If you're thinking about the data centers, that's in ops. If you're thinking about the cyber defenses and the execution and the use of the cyber defenses, that's in ops. If you're talking about the monitoring of the networks, both from a NetOps perspective and a cyber defense perspective, that's in ops. The only thing we don't do is development. And that's done by Mr. Rivera and his group. To facilitate that, one of the things we noticed early on as part of this realignment of capability and responsibility was it's kind of hard to operate the environment, understand what's going on in the environment, especially when you start getting trouble tickets, problem tickets, etc. Is you got to have some kind of engineering capability tied to you so that you can look at things real time and understand where you need to make changes. So one of the things that we did as part of the reorganization was not just collapsing ISC and ops together, but we also moved the end-to-end engineering capability of the agency with the modeling and sim capability into the operations center. So now we have the ability to see what's going on in the networks as problem management tickets pop up or incident management tickets pop up, so that we can see that engineering view and then take better action to resolve what the issue is. As a byproduct of the organization, I not only took over OPC, but the CIO title came back to me as part of that. So now we operate, etc., but I also have the CIO functions for the agency in terms of what are the capabilities the agency is going to use, what's the IT posture of the agency as an organization, in addition to what are we doing to support the DoD enterprise at large. And we've got Mr. Stu Timmerman over here, who's my vice in both counts. So I do the easy stuff. I move all the hard stuff over to Stu. And I like that. So when you look at the operations center, think of it this way. We've got 3 line units. We have the infrastructure directorate, which is led by Mr. Showers. He'll be up and talk. Think of that as the DISA. It's the transport layer, to satellites, etc. So think of your transport pathways. We have the services directorate, which is the enterprise services as well as the computing environment. And that's led by Mr. Jason Martin. He's off at school trying to get educated this week. So we'll have Mr. Raju Shah, who will be briefing in his stead. And then we have the ops directorate led by Mr. Larry Klooster, which is really the operating and defending of the network. In addition to that, I've got 5 directorates that are operating at the center level. And think of those as really consolidation of functions within the organization to optimize and synchronize activities. So think of contracts, personnel, financial, day-to-day activities that support the center at large, things like that which are at that central level, to include the enterprise engineering. The last bullet on this slide is the one that I want you to sit back and take note of, because there's not a lot of detail there, but I'll be happy to talk to you in greater detail. You'll probably hear more and more about this, but we are moving away from this concept of individual data centers, i.e., I own 10 decks scattered across the globe. And starting in January, we're going to one computing environment, one computing ecosystem that is distributed globally, but operating under one chain of command, standardized set of processes, standardized set of tools, supporting the DoD mission at large. So we'll get away from 10 different ways of doing business, 10 different ways of picking tools, 10 different ways of looking at the world, if you will. And we'll have one, and I call it the ecosystem, the computing ecosystem. So you'll hear more about that and be happy to talk to you about that more in detail. But that will kick off in January of 17. FY17 will be focused on putting the capability in place, institutionalizing it. FY18 will be about optimizing. And then in 19 will be about streamlining and going as reduce cost, reduce complexity as much as we possibly can. So if you want to look at a picture, you've got to have an org chart. Here's what that world looks like. Oohs and ahs are heard throughout the crowd. There you go. I heard one. Thanks, Dave. I'll give you that quarter afterwards. Okay. This gives you a sense real quick. I've talked about this already a little bit. Again, infrastructure really is focused on providing that transport, whether we're talking terrestrial or aerial or satellites. Services really about how do we provide that computing infrastructure and enterprise services to the department. And then operations is really operating and defending the DISA. Now, I didn't say the DODN, I said the DISA. We have responsibility for operating and defending the DISA portion of the DODN. So if you need clarity on what's the distinction, I'll be happy to talk to you, but essentially it is everything that's operating that we have within our portfolio, if you will, we have responsibility for, but it does not include the MILDEP side of the equation or other agency-provided capabilities. Okay, the clicker has stopped clicking. Oh, there we go. All right, so again, you'll get the specifics on contracts as we go forward. But one of the things that I've been pushing since we did ISC and where I'm trying to go is to optimize my contracts, reduce numbers, get better pricing as we go forward. Last year, 2 years ago, I had over 900 contracts in my organization. Last year, I was down to just about 700 contracts, task orders, etc. Last number I got about a month or so ago, we were around 560. And we still need to go lower because I just can't, we've got to do better at providing capability via large contracts or vehicles that give us flexibility to do things without having to stand up a contract every time we need to do something. Because I've got to be able to reduce cost. Because if I can't reduce my costs, I can't lower rates to the customers. And if I can't do things cheaply in an efficient manner, then it impacts my ability to defend the environment. So as we mentioned earlier in some of the briefings you heard today, reducing complexity and evolving enterprise services is key to how we need to go forward. That's both from a operational perspective as well as providing capability to the warfighter. I'm really saying that from the standpoint of being the provider of the capability as well as, with my CO hat, the consumer of the capability on behalf of the agency. The other piece is I need to take people out of the loop. Whether we're talking about the transport side of the house or we're talking about the computing side of the house, when it comes to operating and defending the environment, to include the cyber discussion and the discussions that took place this morning on capabilities, if I have people in the middle, every reaction is at the speed of the human's ability to move, okay, or think, or whatever. I tend to think of it as pregnant turtle speed, okay? We cannot operate and defend a network if we're moving at that speed when the threat's moving at the speed of electrons. So I've got to get the people out of the loop. I've got to be able to allow the machines to do what they were designed to do, which is make decisions and interact with other machines at the speed of the flow of the electrons. That's the only way we can ensure that we have an environment that's defensible and that can adapt and react to the threat, because the threat changes every single day. So if you're thinking about how can you help me, if you said, okay, Dave, what's the one thing I really need above all else? It is that last bullet. It is bringing automation into our environment so that we can let the machines operate at machine speed without somebody being in the middle trying to make a conscious decision to go left or go right. Okay, I don't know if I hit 10 minutes, but Jim Steele in the back has not buzzed me off the stage yet. So, questions? Okay, we got one coming up.
I'm Dr. Gela from Gela LLC. My question is about CRADA. Since you're a CIO, is CRADA... can you talk about CRADA and things like that?
So CRADAs, the agency likes to leverage CRADAs. Dave Mihalsic, as the CTO for the agency, is the individual who is the focal point in the agency for working CRADAs with mission business partners, etc. So I've not seen Dave Mihalsic here today, but Dave Mihalsic is the person you're going to want to reach out to.
Okay, and do you work any BPAs within your organization, within your division?
Say that again?
Blanket purchase agreements.
Oh, I don't, so I'm not pushing BPAs, okay, but as you get into the various areas of the organization, they talk about their capabilities, they'll be able to talk to you about if they've got any BPAs coming up, and that's working.
Thank you.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Afternoon, Mr. Bennett. Greg Brundish from CSRA. This morning, Mr. Rivera gave us a great breakout of the capability portfolios and essentially how the DBC is going to look at the various things that DISA provides at an enterprise level. As you look at your operations piece of that, so much of what happens in current ops feeds, the loop in terms of how you manage portfolios and how you inject improvements and basically the changes and mods that you need. I missed the discussion on how you two were going to make sure that the complete capability portfolios are going to be managed.
I didn't think we discussed it. That's kind of a hidden secret. No, so that is a very good question. And Alfred and I worked this when we first did the organizational change a year and a half ago. How do we keep the development and the implementation, sustainment, and operations side synchronized? So we go through great pains, and sometimes that's really what it is, the great pains of bringing the two communities together continuously to talk about what's going on. So as we are seeing things on the operational side, how do we provide that feedback into the developmental side of the house so that we address those issues at development time, or what's the next tech revolution or evolution of the capability? How do we get that addressed? How do we make sure that we don't go down that same path as we go forward? So there's a constant dialogue to make sure that we have that flow of information going back and forth. One of the other things with moving the enterprise engineering capability on the ops side of the house, we've sort of, in some respects, created a common language now, in the sense of, as we see things from an operator perspective, now we can talk to the developers and say, hey, look at this from an engineering view. Architecturally, we're off base, or, you know, from a coding perspective, it's not doing what it's supposed to do. So those are some of the things we're doing just to try and make sure that we're not talking past each other, but providing that constant feedback loop. So as we see things in the field, quite frankly, as soon as we see an issue in the field, we will get on the phone and talk directly with the program office or somebody else in Mr. Rivera's organization. Say, hey, are you seeing this? What's going on? Da 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 da.
Okay, so part of that would be a constant review of enterprise metrics and measures, performance and delivery kind of measures that feed back into that process.
So especially as we're looking at things like when we're hosting capability within the data centers, where we have SLAs and other things tied to the mission partner specifically. Yeah, we'll use that as part of our analysis, if you will, to make certain we know what's going on, if we're performing the standard or not.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it very much. Again, lots of change going on. As the rest of my folks come up and they talk to you about what it is we're doing, please, if you don't have a sense of organizationally how you fit in, talk to the folks afterwards, because it is so key. If you leave it up to us to try to figure out how to use your capability in our environment, we will get it wrong, 100%. We'll get it wrong. So you tell us how your capability fits in our space and how it solves our problem. Okay, thank y'all very much.